When Arthur Kingsley turned 71, he threw himself a modest birthday party. Nothing grand, just his children, their spouses, and a few old friends from the neighborhood. The backyard smelled like grilled chicken and lemon cake. The sun filtered gently through the trees, and the laughter of grandchildren echoed across the lawn. Yet by the time he finished blowing out his candles and sat down on the porch swing, he noticed something unsettling. His son, Nathan, had barely said more than a few words to him. His daughter-in-law smiled politely but kept glancing at her phone. His oldest friend, Henry, left early with a vague excuse. And when the group photo was taken, no one rushed to sit by Arthur. He brushed it off that day. Maybe they were tired. Maybe he was imagining things. But as the weeks passed, the feeling grew. Conversations felt shorter. Invitations came less often. He still heard from everyone, on birthdays, on Father's Day. But the warmth had faded. And Arthur began to wonder, had he done something wrong? Was it simply that he was growing older? Or was there something else at play, something unspoken? He spent his mornings walking around the lake, trying to puzzle it out. And in those long walks, he began to see patterns, small habits, subtle missteps, quiet assumptions that might explain why people, even those closest to him, were pulling away. Here are the 9 subtle reasons he came to believe that some people, despite their smiles, may secretly begin to resent someone as they grow older. So 1, giving unsolicited advice too often. Arthur realized how often he began sentences with, "in my day," or "you know what you should do." He meant well, of course. He wanted to help, to offer wisdom. But he noticed Nathan's jaw tense each time he corrected his parenting. His granddaughter's eyes glazed over when he launched into long stories with moral endings. He thought he was being helpful. They thought he didn't trust them to figure it out. Number 2, acting as though the past was better than the present. He often reminisced about simpler times, the handwritten letters, the slow Sundays, the politeness of strangers. But eventually, he saw how his nostalgia came off as criticism of the world his children were trying to raise their families in. It made them feel dismissed, as if their struggles weren't real, as if their accomplishments were somehow lesser because they didn't match his experience. Now 3, not listening as much as speaking. Arthur liked to talk, but he started noticing how often he interrupted others, especially when they were sharing something personal. He'd jump in with a story of his own, or worse, a comparison. He thought he was relating, but others saw it as turning the spotlight back on himself. 4, resisting change, even when it was necessary. When his daughter-in-law suggested switching to digital banking to make things easier, Arthur waved her off. "I trust paper more." When his son brought up assisted living options for the future, he bristled. "I'm not there yet." But he realized over time that his resistance to change made their lives harder. They had to work around him, make extra accommodations, and over time that builds quiet resentment. 5, expecting others to initiate contact. He waited for calls, for visits, for invitations, but he rarely picked up the phone himself. He didn't mean to be distant. He just thought, "They're busy. I'll wait until they have time." But to them it may have felt like he didn't care. Or worse, that he expected them to carry the full weight of maintaining the relationship. 6, talking about health too much. It started small, mentioning a stiff knee here, a blood pressure reading there. But eventually, Arthur realized he talked about ailments in nearly every conversation. It wasn't that people didn't care. It was that they didn't know how to respond without feeling helpless or emotionally drained. And they began to pull back, not from him, but from the endless catalog of aches. 7, holding on to grudges. There were things Arthur hadn't let go of, old arguments, perceived slights, moments when he felt left out or overlooked. He didn't yell or confront, but he let bitterness shape his tone, his responses, his silences. He thought he was being stoic. Others felt it as quiet punishment. 8, taking up the role of the victim. Whenever plans changed or he was excluded, Arthur sometimes mumbled things like, "Well, I'm just the old guy now," or "guess I'm not important anymore." He didn't say it to manipulate. He truly felt it. But what he didn't see was how those comments made others feel trapped, guilty, and responsible for emotions that weren't theirs. 9, assuming respect is automatically owed with age. This was the hardest one to admit. Arthur had always believed age should come with automatic respect, And in many ways, it should. But he realized that when he used his age as a trump card, expecting deference without listening, insisting on his way simply because he was older, it created quiet tension. Respect, he learned, still needed to be earned, not enforced. One afternoon, as he stood by the lake watching geese move in pairs across the water, Arthur made a choice. He couldn't reverse his age. He couldn't undo every moment of obliviousness, but he could change what came next. That week, he began making small adjustments. He called his son, not to ask for anything, but to ask how he was doing. And he listened, really listened. He took his granddaughter out for coffee and let her talk, without peppering her stories with advice. He wrote a letter to his friend Henry, not about old times, but about what he'd learned lately, how he'd changed. He stopped opening every family dinner conversation with complaints. Instead, he asked questions about their jobs, their dreams, the music they liked. And slowly, the cold softened. His daughter-in-law texted him photos during the day. His son invited him to help build a treehouse for the kids. His friend Henry called him back. They hadn't stopped loving him. They'd just grown tired of being unseen. Aging, Arthur realized, didn't have to mean fading into the background. But it did mean growing wiser, not just in knowledge, but in awareness. Of self, of impact, of space taken and space shared. People may secretly resent you as you grow older. Not out of cruelty, but fatigue. From carrying expectations you no longer realize you're placing on them. But those relationships aren't gone. They're just waiting for you to meet them halfway. So Arthur did. One call, one kind word, one humble step at a time.